guys, welcome to the first edition of the Mofo and Sam, catch your name, video series. In this we hope to address some of the common problems associated with the big three lifts. So if you're a strong man, a powerlifter, bodybuilder, a strength athlete generally, you're going to find this will be a useful video series to look into. Sam is probably second in the world currently?
Currently ranked second in the world for 2019 in my weight class for raw powerlifting. So yeah, we've teamed up to try and see if we can fix some of these common injuries that are associated with strength training. Specifically today, we're going to be talking about elbow pain, bicep and front delt pain associated with low bar squatting. We will be moving on to other areas that are associated with pain when squatting, knees and hip joints as well. But today it's going to be low bar squats and elbow pain. How we're going to fix that.
So in terms of a low bar squat, because you know better about this than I do, let's say the optimum position, you get yourself into a position where you can get your hands pretty close to your shoulders. What difference does that make in terms of your lift?
In terms of, well, I think it's better to go to what actually causes the pain in your elbow first. So the reason why we get pain in our elbow, golfers, tennis, bicep, or even front delt uncommonly, from low bar squats is due to a lack of mobility to be able to get into an appropriate position, a low bar squat, to bear the weight on our shoulders.
So as a result of that, you have to blow your tension out by taking your arms wide.
So you'll see commonly, you see a big guy squatting, his arms are all the way out here. You see a smaller person, their arms are in a lot closer.
Yeah.
The problem is what happens, the bigger we get, the less mobile we get, the further out the arms get, and when we're starting to bear heavy loads, it's not going directly through the torso and through the limbs with a straight line as it should do. So when we start moving our arms out, further down the chain, the load which is not meant to take 300 plus kilos is going to bear the brunt of the force.
So essentially, because you've got limited movement here, you're having to blow off the tension that you've created here at the joints downstream.
Yeah, so
you start to get elbow pain, bicep pain, because what you're trying to do is basically create movement of those joints, because you haven't got it up here.
You don't have the mobility to get into the back of there, so you force yourself into position, which is fine when you're squatting, it'll be uncomfortable. As everybody will know, low bar squats do not feel nice anyway. You'll do your squats, you'll probably feel fine throughout the session, but then a day or two later it starts to ache a little bit, and that's because you're not mobile enough to hold that position, hold that weight. And that's when we tend to find we get pain when we're bench pressing. That's where 90% of people start realising, oh, I've got elbow, I've got tennis elbow.
So the assumption on those is that they've got elbow pain because they're benching, whereas you're suggesting the elbow pain comes as a result of the lack of mobility in the low bar squats.
Yes.
And the blowing off the tension into the joints.
A lot of people do think it's because of the bench pressing. It's not. I'm not suggesting it is. So what happens is the tendon becomes aggravated from bearing load it's not supposed to. It becomes inflamed. It becomes painful, and then when we start to try and put load through it in a different movement, when we're bench pressing, your body's telling you, ouch, this hurts, and no matter how tough and hard you think you are not going to be able to press that weight as powerfully as you can. Your body will protect itself. So it's not necessarily to improve your squat. The reason we want to improve our mobility when we're doing low bar squats is to improve our bench press.
Okay.
So, powerlifting is a 3-lift sport. It's a combination of squat, bench and deadlift. And if you're trying to bench through pain week in, week out, it's going to hinder your progress, and your bench press is going to suffer, and ultimately your total, which is the whole point of powerlifting, getting the highest total, is not going to be as high as what it can be. So, you're the expert. What would you recommend what are the reasons for a lack of mobility to get into a low bar position, and what would you prescribe somebody like myself to do in order to increase that mobility or alleviate that pain throughout their training?
So I think the first thing I'd look at with all you guys will be thoracic spine mobility.
To turn to the side?
Yeah, you can do. So typically this part of your back, and this is one of those things that if you imagine the lower back and the pelvis linked together, the thoracic spine and your scapula, these two areas link really well together. Now your scapula is obviously the bone on which your shoulder joint's attached to, so hugely important for able to get into position, but also for your bench. So I think the first thing we'd look at would be thoracic spine mobility. That'd be one of my key go-to points. That's the front. I think then the next areas would be front delts, pec minor. So there's a little muscle in here, just sits just underneath the clavicle, between the delts and the clavicle. Pec minor gets very tight. That changes the orientation of the scapula, so then you find that changes the way the glenohumeral joint, the shoulder joint works. Mm-hmm. And then I think a lot of the problems, and you know, correct me if you think I'm wrong here, when you feel this pain in your front delts, I think what you're actually feeling is the long head of biceps. Mm-hmm. Tendon of that runs through here.
It comes up and connects through here, yeah?
Yeah, so it goes into the shoulder joint. It's actually almost like a rotator cuff muscle. It comes through. So when people talk about pain in the front delt, in my experience, that tends to be more long head of biceps issues. Mm-hmm. Which again, if you think about the low bar squat position, that's maximally stretched in that position. It's basically on the front of the shoulder joint, front of the shoulder joint's tight. That's part of the reason that joint is going to be tight. I think the other areas or the other problems that we'd probably say, I think the elbow pain, if it's kind of more medially, more on the inside of the joints, that's the continuation of the biceps tendon. Mm-hmm. You get some pain in here, don't you, actually in the biceps muscle itself.
Yeah.
Now interesting, I think when we've worked with Sam in the past, when we've done some neural flossing, so when we've tried to get the nerves moving, I think what Sam's feeling in his bicep here is more like to be nerve tightness as opposed to just muscle tightness.
Yeah. It's an interesting point you touch on there, because a lot of people, they think it's just due to, They don't. A lot of people don't touch on nerves actually affecting it. So basically, in order to get into a low bar position, you need to be able to move. You need to do mobility in your thoracic spine, your lats, your external rotation, which is your pec minor, pec major. All of those things are kind of embodied. You need those things to be able to move well, to be able to get into a low bar position.
Yeah.
So, what would you advise to stretch to be able to get into a position like that, or is there something else?
I think stretching. I mean, there's tons and tons of conflicting evidence in terms of stretching. So the current theories about stretching is it doesn't actually change the length of the muscle. All it does is relaxes the nervous system down temporarily. So it's a temporary fix.
Also, you don't want to be doing it prior to training, as it decreases performance.
Absolutely. So there's some evidence that if done within 20 minutes of a lift, it can actually decrease power outputs. So obviously, if you're about to pull 340 as your opener, you don't want any detriment to your performance from that perspective.
If you've got pain in your biceps and your pecs or whatever from low bar squatting and your benching, you do not want to be to be stretching.
Yeah. So I think stretching for me is something, if you're going to do stretching at all, it has to be done chronically. It has to be done every day. You have to set aside 10 minutes. If you've got problem areas where you need to increase the length of the muscle, then I think you set your stretching well away from the training session for the reasons we just talked about.
Yeah. So for me, I am currently suffering with a bit of bicep pain when I'm benching. That is due to my own immobility. For me, I've got a busy lifestyle. I work full time. I train 4 or 5 times a week. I do online coaching. I have physio sessions with you. I have a fiance. There's not a lot of time on the card. So stretching is something I do few and far between, but I do it after my sessions.
Yeah.